And tonight, some real intense Doctor Who debate that will get you behind the sofa.
Hello, let me take you back, timey-wimey time. 2nd of January 1971 through to the 23rd of January 1971. Patrick Mulcairn in the Radio Times, talking of Terror of the Autons, said, vibrant colours, sharp compositions, fast narrative, snappy dialogue, a cloak-flapping superhero and his saturnine nemesis. Yes, Terror of the Autons is Doctor Who as comic strip adventure. And when a scene ends in a craggy close-up on John Pertwee demanding exactly who and why, you can almost see the speech bubble. Now, I've got this written down anyways, a seminal Doctor Who story, units in full flow, you've got the introduction of the Master, Joe, the settling of the Doctor character now in his second season, the development a little bit of the Time Lords, still not established up to the Deadly Assassin, but you've got your Moriarty villain introduced here, and we've got a lot to say about that one. So please stick with us. It's going to be a very interesting discussion. Our burning issue, there's only one in town after the War Games in colour, and that's where I've said, you know, did the War Chief get there first? Because, of course, they're changing canon, and so I'll get the panel's views on that. We've got our usual items, don't you worry. What would the shooty Doctor do in the same situation as the third Doctor? I mean, perish the thought. We've got our intimacy watch, because as a careful custodian of Classic Who, in the light of the appointment of a season 2 intimacy coordinator, we need to make sure everything's above board so it can be shown and not censored. We've got to be very careful nowadays. We, as you know, are very strict with how we do this. We judge the story by 3 criteria. You've got the one there, true Who or boo-hoo, in essence. You've got, we judge it on its production values and whether they've been utilised well. We obviously look at whether it actually engaged the audience and actually had a suitable resolution. And then, of course, we then give our final conclusion. And that's to make sure that you can compare all our reviews. There's no eulogising going on. There's no favoritism going on. There's no waffling going on, because we respect our viewers. We try to be very fair, whether it's the 5 Doctors, Power of the Doctor, whatever. Okay, so hopefully you're here for the ride to look at the Terror of the Autons. So to do that, I obviously need to get my panel on. And of course, let's just start. It looks like Muggins here first of all, but from the very beginning, he's been with us. So let's get him on. Hello, Hugh.
Hello.
Were you happy with this choice?
I mean, absolutely. I think it is seminal in many ways. So it's just one of those ones which, after the previous series where we've had 7 episodes with a lot of padding, there's nothing in padding in this. Sometimes it could do with a bit of padding.
And what's interesting, you've referenced season 7 and this being season 8. You can see that the producer and Terence Dicks have sat down and have thought about it on how they develop this series. And of course, in the situation we're in now with 2025, if only RTD has hopefully had that moment to look at his season 1 and develop season 2. But that's for a different conversation. Another one of our original panelists, here she is, all the way from Virginia. Good to see you, Michelle.
Hello.
Now, had you seen this one before?
No, this was an introduction to this episode too, and I loved it.
Oh, I'm picking all the right ones for you at the moment.
Well, it's just a great era of Doctor Who. I mean, even the bad ones aren't really all that bad compared to what's being produced right now. So even the bad ones, I find something to love.
Yeah. Well, this one, I mean, it is a famous one, but it's become more tasty because of the very reason I said in the preface. And we might have an extra panelist, but at the moment it's going to be a quartet. So we'll get Brian on from Canada. Good to see you again, Brian.
Good morning, Brendan.
Now, you obviously had seen this before because you were very excited when I told you I'd chosen it. So, of course, how many times have you watched this?
I honestly couldn't say. Countless.
Yeah.
I love this episode so much.
Oh, well, again, good choice, good choice. Well, that remember, we're going to be dead strict on it, and you have your favorite moments, but we'll be really strict on it. Now, of course, we can talk about Terror of the Autons, but I do want to start with the burning issue. And as I said, there's only one in town. So be ready, buckle in, because this is a big one. Here we go. So I'll have to keep looking at that a little bit. Keeps messing on. All right, I'll have to do some editing on this one. This is messing on a little bit. I'm a bit angry. Let me just mess on and just see why it's just done that suddenly. I haven't done that. Right, okay, sorry. I will sort that out. So I'm going to wave to myself so I know there's some issue I've got to look out for. Sorry about that. So that was the burn-in issue. But I'm going to now back introduce the next bit, see if there's a problem with this one. Oh, joy of life. I will just play the thing, which is our issue with the master. Let me just get the right blooming screen up. Right. So... yeah, of course, it's the Master. This was an elegant, charismatic introduction to the Master, as invented by Terence Dicks and Barry Letts, ably written in this story by Robert Holmes. However, over Christmas, we get the War Games in colour. We get Phil Collinson, with all his writing credentials, telling us that he has actually... he always felt that the war chief in the War Games was the Master. And you have Benjamin Cook saying the very same thing. And so suddenly you've got, what's going to happen now in fandom? People say, well, canon. And as I've made the point, if you have an episode of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire quiz show, and the question comes up, when was the Master introduced to Doctor Who? Being a fan, I'd think it's 1971. But knowing for a fact that somebody's messed with canon, do I say 1969? And so suddenly they're queering the pitch. So I want to get all your opinion on what's happened with the Master. And whether, everybody says, for example, look, I can cope with whatever RTD's doing now. I can cope with it because I've got my classics. But my argument is, if they keep messing around with the classics, they might spoil your enjoyment of some of the classics. And so we're going to look at the Master. So where do you stand, Hugh, on this one? I mean, I'll ask what you thought of Terror of the Autons, obviously, in a moment. But regarding our burning issue of, this does queer the pitch a bit.
Yeah, so I just ignore nonsense like this, really, honestly. I don't see how you can have the Master with this introduction and have it doesn't make any sense because he's introduced specifically as new here. And that doesn't make any sense, and it's just it doesn't feel to me it's what Terrence Dicks wants. I know it's not what Terrence Dicks wants, and he's in charge as far as I'm concerned on that.
Yeah, Michelle, where do you stand on this one?
I'm against it. This is not the War Master was not the Master. it's the first master is Dagata and Terror of the Autons. And my question is, why does the current generation of New Who constantly need to insert themselves into classic Who? You know, at the same time, they're slagging it off, saying how sloppy it was. And then all of a sudden, they're always needing to insert themselves into it. So I have some really questions of, you know, why do they need to insert themselves into someone else's creation?
Well, it's interesting because when we did, they did Tales of the TARDIS and they did Pyramids of Mars to obviously introduce Sutek. They were added some lines, didn't they? That you had the Egyptian plunderers and you had people treasure hunters, and you know how they do this cultural appropriation stuff, and they're just throwing politics all the time now. When actually there could have been a case that it wasn't necessarily plundering what happens, and some of the stuff in the British Museum might be there because it was actually looking after something rather than plundering it. You know, but there's a political argument that they love to wade into.
Well, also they don't want to talk about that the first explorers of Egypt were actually given permission by the ruling Muslim rulers of Egypt. Gave European powers permission to go in there. They're very early.
But then the other thing now, as I was coming to Brian, is to actually say, while they make their nice, cheap political points all over this Doctor Who show, aren't they doing the very same thing and plundering classic Who and making their own version of it?
Yeah, they are. They are in many ways. Yeah.
So, Brian, what are your thoughts on the Master was maybe not in this story as a first appearance? Actually, it's when he was the War Chief.
This is his first appearance. The War Chief is a fanboy's dream come true who just had the power to try to rewrite canon. It's I think it was Paul McGann, in the movie on Fox, who said, "I love humans, always seeing patterns in things that aren't there." And I think that applies to this absolutely perfectly. The War Chief, completely different character. He's a Time Lord, completely different character. Same with the Monk, different character. So we have two different Time Lords before the Master was introduced. This is just a fanboy dream, and they're trying to make it canon now.
Now, even the Radio Times, not now, but earlier, when they were doing the review of Terror of the Autons, there are a few lines in it that say this. At first glance, this introduction of the Master, he seems an amalgam of the traits and costume of the Warlord and War Chief who appeared in the War Games. But then the Radio Times then says, but it quickly becomes clear he's the arch enemy the Doctor's been arching for, more like a Moriarty, and then it goes on to explain his character. It seems to me, when you talked about its fanboys getting away with themselves, and Phil Collinson and Benjamin Cook refer to this, it's just that outfit there. It's because he has that high collar, and it's grey, and because the Master basically is introduced not like that, he's introduced like that, that there you go, it's the same man, and the beard, of course. But you know, this is like joining the dots. It's kind of, you know, the Celestial Toy Maker, you know, he could be, you know, he could be the Star Detective in Terror of the Autons, if I think about it, you know. It's the nonsense. But the next big question...
Sorry. Go ahead.
But the next big question to you all, though, is you all knew that there'd been this fuss about the War Chief and the War Games in colour. So when you watched this for our review, was it in the back of your head?
No, I just thought it was ridiculous. And I was like, you know, Shredder. And also, like, why do the writers think that there only needs to be like 5 Time Lords? It's like, how many? This is a full planet of people. Why do they always have to resort to the 5? And everyone has to be the same character.
Yeah, and if you could have to a Time Lord appear floating in the air, surely he's going to say, "It's the guy that we talked to you about before."
Yeah.
It makes the Time Lords look idiotic if you do that. To be fair, quite often, I'm not sure Robert Holmes doesn't want them to look idiotic, but it obviously wasn't his intention.
Right.
Although there's one of your plot holes straight away, though, isn't there? Which is the Time Lord appears and says, you know, the Master's appeared on Earth. You need to watch out for him and everything. Why don't they just apprehend him then?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, obviously,
the Time Lords are hands off anyway.
That's a very good point.
So the Time Lords are the Time Lords. They're paper pushers. They're bureaucratic, bunglers.
Yeah. But he's a renegade. He's not supposed to be doing what he's doing. So if anybody was to be taken and put on trial by the Time Lords, it would be the Master.
Mhm.
If they put the Doctor on trial, they would definitely put the Master on trial. So it just doesn't gel.
And in my books, I thought Edward Brayshaw's performance in the War Games was good enough that you shouldn't undersell it or diminish it by making it something it wasn't. And that, because now you're going to go back, it's almost as if somebody's saying we need to elevate Edward Brayshaw's performance as the war chief. We need to elevate it to make it something much more substantial. No, you don't. I actually liked his performance in the War Games.
He was great.
Yeah, and actually, you knew he was up to mischief. I know there's that moment when Patrick Troughton's Doctor looks across, sees the war chief, and they seem to look at each other. And for some reason, he wants him caught straight away. And, some people have joined the dots and thought, well, it's because they recognize each other. Therefore, but even if they recognize...
That doesn't apply to here, because the Doctor doesn't recognize the Master here. Not in the same way, and that doesn't. None of it makes any sense if you do this, and that's the problem with a lot of the retconning on this. You have to accept that a lot of Doctor Who lore doesn't make any sense, but you're almost certainly just going to make it worse by retconning.
Well, it's like the Sutek. It makes no sense. The Sutek has been sitting for 40 years on top of the TARDIS.
No, it's
interesting.
Go on, Brian.
Yeah, it's interesting that in The Deadly Assassin, they had at least 2 instances. I know the Doctor and to the TV reporter, shall we say, Ronson, or the Ronsital, and they recognized each other, not right away, but they were like, oh, yes, it's you. And he said, I heard you left in some sort of scandal. And I think there may have been one other instance where 2 Time Lords, even though they'd regenerated, they recognized each other. So I think that's, they obviously this was written first, so they can't go by that rule. But I think, John's Doctor didn't recognize his voice over the phone. But perhaps when seeing him, a delayed reaction. He knew. I mean, he's got the Van Dyke going, You go to an alternate universe like on Star Trek, what's Spock gonna have? He's gonna have this because he's evil. Everybody who's evil has this.
Then you can twirl it and stroke it. You gotta do that evil stroke.
Now, as we talk about the Master as a character, I mean, this is season 8. Doctor Who's been going 8 years now. It is a game changer, for good or bad. We can discuss that. Do you think it was needed? Do you think we did? Terence Dix and Barry Letts famously said, Doctor Who needs his Moriarty, and this is going to be him. Do you think this is what was needed for the Doctor Who series at the time? He may have been overused since and diminished to a golden tooth and all that nonsense, but do you think this was necessary?
I think moving to something different from season 7 was necessary. I think season 7 is the 7 episodes thing didn't work, and I honestly don't. 7 episodes never works. It's not 6 episodes might work sometimes, but 7 episodes never going to work, and it needed something that brought it into a more political aspect rather than the scientific aspect. Season 7's too scientific. And I say that as a fan of hard science fiction.
Well, Hugh, he's trying to undercut you. You know what he's like. He's done it all his life. How are you, John?
Undercutting.
well,
he's all dapper today. Look at his little.
Yes, I always dress for the occasion.
Your ears were burning because you know for a fact we're dissing the war chief as the Master, and you need to get your Tupperware in. That's what you want.
Listen, sorry to interrupt you, Hugh. Sorry about this, but the effort I go to for the show, straight out of committee meetings and onto this. There you go. See that? Look at that. Never let it be said, I'm not committed to your channel. Maybe I should be committed.
Well,
we all should be committed.
There's a license out there for you. Yes.
But anyway, enough about me. Sorry to drop, folks. Sorry. But, yeah.
Well, we would have our burning issue was whether people can be as compartmentalized as saying Classic Who is safe. I enjoy it. You can do what the hell you want nowadays. However, when you start to know that they've faffed with something in the war games regarding who the war chief could be, does it then dangle in the back of your head when you do watch something like Terror of the Autons that they are messing with actually your enjoyment of those past episodes? I mean, where do you stand on this, John?
Sorry to hijack it by coming in and soliciting and giving my opinion, but no, I don't. One of the streams we did recently, I think it was State of Decay, was I'm not allowing these people to live free in my head. So they can do what they like. I'll just ignore it because you and I spoke briefly, Brendan, about this. And you've had contact with people who knew Malcolm Hulke or Malcolm Hulke's work, and we know what Terence Dicks said in the matter. I'll take it from the writers of this, the people who created the character, the people who put him on screen. The war chief is not the master. If they choose to underpin that with a little bit of John Sim master music, good luck to them. All they're doing is exerting their power. That's all it is. It's a power kick. When fans didn't have the internet and they all had fanzine back in the day, they had power kicks. They always felt, what are you doing when I'm talking?
It's all right. I'm directing.
How dare you? I'm getting very upset. I might flounce off again.
Oh, down, Paul RTD.
It is about power. Fans always have this social, always this stratification. And the people in charge of Doctor Who now are Uber fans. And they're just exerting that Uber fan power kick over the rest of us. And I choose to ignore it.
But as I say, they accuse everybody else of cultural appropriation, yet they appropriate what they want from Classic Who and change it and think that's all right, Jack. And it's funny that there was...
Do you think that there's any sense of a through line?
Yeah, well, there's no logic at all.
Ideology, there ain't.
I saw the other day there was a text from Toby Hodok, who was defending Benjamin Cook and Phil Collinson because they all know each other, and that's fair enough. You know, you defend your friends and professionals, saying because you know you love these people and everything, you know all the effort they've put in. You know, be careful with your criticism type thing. However, nobody's mentioning what about Terence Dicks? What about Malcolm Hulke? They also put a lot of work into this. Is there anyone defending their integrity and their characterization? Sorry, Robert Holmes as well. But yeah, hold on. You see, this is what I was trying to direct. So you can't win, and this is you're just in time. Oh heck!
What do you? Oh no!
Hold on. Who's this?
I'll go back to my meeting.
You will obey me.
Well, not when you're on late. I mean, who are you trying to be this time? The war chief or the master?
I am universally known as the master.
Oh, in his own head. Oh, do you know? Have you got a title, John and Hugh? What's your title?
So what? I can yell just as loud as you can.
Yeah, I mean, you're universally known as the master. Well, you might be called the war chief or the caretaker because they're going to change your name, mate.
No, I am the master.
Actually, you're more like Missy.
You will obey me.
He's only got one line. I mean, how you try and make the most of one line?
In the US, we can't use the title master anymore, so be careful.
Actually, I didn't you think his entrance wasn't very good because we didn't have the Dudley Simpson music?
I don't watch the X certificate version of this. I never saw his entrance.
Where is my dematerialization circuit?
Up your entrance.
yeah. Well, you've written it somewhere. It's probably with Moses. But oh heck.
Well, as I was saying to Tubby Rowlands down at the club.
Why does he sound like Wurzel Gummidge gone wrong?
It's Jamie.
We need to reverse the polarity of the neutron flow.
He's got a cold, but it's gone like the Tunes advert. Remember that?
Is Jamie on the helium?
I think I'm getting worried now. Do you want to take some more medicine?
I'm going to shrink you.
Shrink me?
Yeah.
I don't need any help with that.
Don't worry,
I was in a pool. Sorry.
Yeah. I know.
Shrinkage.
It's winter.
Don't worry, Brendan. He shrinks you. That happens in most marriages after a while.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the closest Jamie's been to me for ages.
Are we past the honeymoon phase?
Yeah. The only time I get any affection is via the puppets. But then,
Well, you know, it's 2025. To each his own. To each his own.
anyway,
There's a Reddit subgroup for that.
I'll ask Jamie later when in bed that he can say, I am the master, and see how far he gets.
You will obey me.
Just to pick up on what Michelle was saying, you can't really do that now because of Neil Gaiman.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I know we can't say anything, but it's worrying. Well, it's worrying stories like that, but it's also worrying that all these people, I mean, are they going to take shows off? Are they going to start?
Well, you've got to think that if they took the bit with Hugh Edwards off in terms of fear, then the Doc's Wife and Silver Nemesis have to be extremely dubious in terms of remaining up.
Have I missed something? Been in a committee meeting today?
So there's a big article on sort of the accusations, a number of accusations against Neil Gaiman, which go into horrendous detail, including asking young women to call him the master.
But
and asking fans for new
this is only YouTube. Got to be careful.
No, but I mean, we can talk about the article's out there. I mean, like it's published. It's perfectly fine to talk about the article. It's just an accusation at this stage. I have no idea, but it's. I think it's going to make it extremely difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it. Yeah. So
that's going to put an end to many karaoke careers, is it not? Because there's some people, all they do is sing Neil Diamond karaoke. So that's the end of Sweet Caroline for them.
So there's all the problems we've got with this series. So let me just wrap up with some of our notables. Let me just go bigger so I can actually read the blooming thing. So it was actually going to be called The Terror of the Autons. It was going to be called The Spray of Death. Doesn't have the right ring to it, does it?
No.
They also
sounds wrong.
Yeah, they also thought it give away something that was going to happen in episode 3 to, give too much away. The director was, of course, Barry Letts, but it had to be uncredited because of the usual contractual reasons. God, how many did he direct really in the end and break the rules? There was a big scene.
One per season. One per season. I think that was is in his agreement to produce the show, that he would at least get to produce one or direct one show per season.
Yeah. There was a big scene with a policeman stumbling on the Auton coach and being murdered when an Auton does not respond to his question that was totally taken out. It's a bit of a shame that really, because this is really good stuff. Terry Walsh, the footage of him falling down the quarry, well, that wasn't set up as it was supposed to, but it was so spectacular and he didn't get hurt.
That was epic. That was epic.
Oh,
yeah.
Great stuff.
Yeah. He stands up again at the bottom, doesn't he? So it's absolutely amazing how he does it.
And the fact that you see the character the whole time, he's bouncing like a doll. He's not trying to block himself. I mean, he's flipping the floor and flipping.
I've got some great footage of the stunt from the radar later, but the troll doll obviously had somebody inside, and he flaked out. So he was supposed to chase Joe across the laboratory, and that got cut. Nicholas Courtney with depression, so therefore a lot of shots. Yeah, that was a shame. I didn't know that about him.
Yeah. I think it's part of the profession, as well as I think the nature of work, the lack of work. Around that time, Nicholas Courtney was also working in an antiques shop in order to make ends meet because he had a young family. So. I think that was all part and parcel of his condition, if you like, his insecurity.
What I will
say, the fact that he was so professional as an actor that you couldn't see that he was suffering.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, but the other thing I would say, Michelle, is that it's obviously he was cared for enough that they kept him in. They reduced some of his lines. They changed some of the shots, and therefore, when people go on about welfare and everything, it was happening in 1971. If you had a decent boss, One of the interesting notes that came through when I looked at this was they said at the climax of episode 4, the Doctor originally said he would stay on Earth until I destroy him or until he destroys me. The head of serials, Ronnie Marsh, thought that was sounding too bloodthirsty, so changed it. So then instead, the Doctor muses about their next encounter, which I think gives a dodgy fit to the story because there is carnage everywhere. And the Doctor seems pleased that there'll be more, I mean, by implication, that there might be more chaos in the future. What are your thoughts on that editorial change? Go on, John. I'll start with John. I'll go along the line.
Sorry, I'm just trying to keep, can't to not be the gob SH1T that I tend to be at times on these things. So, yeah. But then they do that, but then they go again, and at the end of Claws of Axos, they do it anyway. You know, there's just been a nuclear explosion in the Claws of Axos. The Doctor says he's quite looking forward to it, you know, or there's something along those lines. I can't remember exactly what it was. But yeah, I quite agree that we don't know how many thousands of people are supposed to have died as a result of the spray of death. And, you know, the Doctor just seems to take it in his stride and assume that a rematch for the Master will be on the cards or whatever it is. That's all fine. I think it reflects what essentially this iteration, season 8, reflects, is a more cartoon-like quality to Doctor Who. It's very bold, it's very brash, it's very colourful. It's the sort of Doctor Who that would look good in a comic strip, and it is very cartoony. So I think what basically they're trying to do here is just unfrighten the kiddies, having frightened them. It's all right because the Doctor's cool with us, so should you be. And after all, the Master's not that bad anyway because the Doctor's probably looking forward to seeing him again. The fact that they didn't end up doing that, it still doesn't take away from the fact that throughout it, the Doctor and the Master treat each other as though they're pleased to see each other again on certain occasions. So, as I say, they're still doing that. But I think it sits and fits very well with the whole theme and look of this season. Had the Master appeared a season prior to that, I would imagine it'd be far, far darker.
Yeah. Brian, what do you think? Which climax would you prefer? The one that was on screen or the one that was written?
You know, it's funny because the original one on screen, I thought that it was, given what the Master had just done and the threat that he poses, I thought that response was a little flippant, like, yeah, whatever, we'll see what happens in the future. It's like, this is important. You should be a little more concerned than this. However, this line here, it's not so much the tone that bothers me, it's just the logic saying he would stay on Earth until I destroy him, or he destroys me. He has no choice but to stay on Earth until the Time Lords let him leave. So that line doesn't exactly make any sense. It also would imply that the Master would also keep coming back to Earth over and over and over again, which also doesn't really make much sense. So, but if I had to choose one or the other, I do prefer the originally transmitted version.
Yeah, Michelle. I mean, Michelle, the only issue I've got is maybe, I suppose, the verb destroy, because for the Doctor to want to destroy somebody. But apart from that, it sounds quite a good moral leadership that he wants to hang around because the Master's on Earth, so I need to help Earth. But which one would you prefer?
I kind of think the one on TV is he's more intellectually stimulated by the Master versus the Carnage, because again, he's an alien, and you really feel that he is an alien in this story, that he is not part of Earth and Earth cultures and Earth morals to a certain degree. So he's not looking forward to the Carnage; he's looking forward to the mental stimulation because he's bored silly being stuck on Earth. So to have somebody that he can finally match wits with, of the equal intelligence of him, is what he's looking forward to.
And he's just got rid of Liz Shaw. Could have had his match up there.
Yeah.
Hugh, on my same question about the two choices, you just wonder whether, if he'd gone for the version that's written there about, you know, I will stay, he's got a focus, which is not faffing with the TARDIS, because I actually found that a little bit irritating in here. I didn't like the TARDIS console in the lab. I didn't like all that stuff, to be honest.
I mean, I'm not keen on it, but I think it's an odd dichotomy to have gone down. I think there's a very easy rewrite of that line, as you've said, that it doesn't have to be about destroy. I think one of the things to get onto is tonally, this is a very odd series, the Terror of the Autons specifically. And I think that it's a bit all over the place. So I don't think that it's consistent, and I think that's problematic. And even if you take that we've just had the Master, in theory, work with the Doctor to save the world, then that it all gets a bit weird.
Yeah. So, oh gosh, I've got to introduce the ratings, of course, the ratings, because I hammer them when they're in Present Who. So there you go. This is how to do it, isn't it? Look at that. They've a steady building audience over 4 weeks. You've added 1 million. Wow. So they were doing it right. They knew how to do it. Do you know what? I'm tempted to think that's why RTD, etc., don't do it as much, because they're scared of saying we've got a series that should be building, because then it would expose whether their narrative skills can do it. Barry Letts, Robert Holmes, Terence Dicks knew how to build an audience. And look at that. I mean, obviously,
this is quite unusual. I mean, all of going up in a linear fashion is unusual. They don't normally do that.
No, so the audience clearly, I mean, you have to guess from that, liked the introduction of this new quality to the program, liked how UNIT was being presented, liked Joe Grant, liked this version of the Doctor from season 7. This was sitting well. I mean, John, if you do the comparison to season 7 to season 8, we were saying in our opening kind of gambit, this is a seminal moment for Doctor Who in so many different ways. And to be honest, they got it right.
Yeah. I belong to the... Did you just faint?
I'm just looking out to get someone at the door.
Oh, right. Do you want me to pause?
Keep going.
Why did he wait till I was speaking? I want to know, why did he wait till I was speaking? Anyhow, I'm on one tonight. So I'm one of the group of people who regret the change from season 7 to season 8, and that tonal change, the change that I understand why it had to happen. I understand that it was Barry Letts had decided, and he and Terence Dicks were more comfortable with that, but I regret the change, and I think Doctor Who may well have been doing even better. And I'm not suggesting that would have suggested not taking on Joe Grant and Captain Yates. That could all still happen. I'm just suggesting that the tone, as the Quatermass type look of season 7 had, suited my idea of what Doctor Who looks like. And I just think this was a bit too cartoonish in comparison. I would love to have seen something like Terror of the Autons done in a season 7 style, and I tend to think that not only could Doctor Who moved a bit later, it might have built a more adult audience, and that would have been interesting to see what happened there. It may also be entirely wrong. I mean, will have been that kind of sound of the death knell for Doctor Who, and Barry Letts did exactly the right thing, as maybe may well he did. I just, from a personal point of view, think it might have been nice to have seen that one-off season 7 as an era rather than as a season, and see how that had played out. And in my head, that would have maybe doubled Doctor Who's viewing figures instead of just adding 1 or 2 notches to them.
Anybody else got an opinion on this start as an intro, as a fresh blood, fresh start? How we think it lands? Anybody got an opinion on that one?
Just one thing in terms of, obviously, we've talked about the cartoon aspect of it, and it's very colourful. I will stick up my hand again, as I've talked about before, and first time I saw it wasn't in colour because I didn't have a colour television. And I imagine I was far from alone.
Yeah.
Would have been by far and away the majority, by far and away.
So, one of the items I quickly throw in, and it is a quick throw in, is the actual time Eddy itself. Because every Doctor Who story, after a while, you can see ripples across the vortex. So Here's a few. You'll have yours. Please throw them in for a second. So obviously starting with the ones I quickly noticed, and they're easy hits. I'm hitting the low hanging fruit here. So basically, of course, greatest show on the in the galaxy. You've got the classic there. I don't need to explain that. I know. It's interesting because they thought the Gods of Ragnarok might come back in season 2. You obviously have the mission from the Time Lord, the intrusion from a Time Lord, like in Genesis later on. You obviously had, I mean, Robert Holmes, you can tell it's Robert Holmes. Rossini at the circus is just like Jago, is just like, how many times he loves those showbiz style characters, doesn't he? I just absolutely love it. And then my final one for now is, I don't know how many times I watched Terror of the Autons, and I was thinking when we were in the radar antenna and all the rest of it, I was thinking of Logopolis, the master having his moment with the doctor. And I keep going back to Logopolis. But just while we're on the time, Eddie, has anyone got any thoughts of other stories that it resonated with, or tried to copy it since, for example?
Well, I think that, like, whenever you picked up on The Great Show on Earth, I think a lot of that series with Sylvester McCoy is hugely influenced by this, by the Terror of the Autons. I think that's what Andrew Cartmell's going after.
Yeah. I can see what you mean. I mean, John, am I pushing this too? Hold on, John. I'll bring Brian and Michelle in. Otherwise, it's Brian. Am I pushing this too far on all these resonances across the time vortex here, or do you think no? I can see the touch. Or did you see any other resonances in other programs we've had?
No, but I don't. I think you've got a point there. I was never actually a fan of The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, and I can't quite remember much about it. But this particular scene from Genesis, this is the best duo right there of Henry Gordon Jago and can't recall the guy's character's name. Lightfoot, that's right. Of course. London's whatever. They were both brilliant. The best. And some people might say that Gordon Jago is over the top. I was like, no, he's a showman, and he was perfect. He's absolutely perfect.
He's a Victorian JMT. Michelle, did you? Because we're all Doctor Who fans. When we watch any Doctor Who story, I think you think, oh, that scene's a bit like that one. Did you have any thoughts?
I kept thinking Logopolis, like someday the Doctor will meet his end in his fourth incarnation at a observatory in a gantry.
In this very same place, yes.
In this very same place.
Yes. So anyway, story itself. This is when we, as Doctor Who fans, talk about where we stand on this story and where the standout moments are for us, good or bad. And I've got to be fair on this one. So, Hugh, Terror of the Autons as a 4-episoder, standout moments or low light moments?
I mean, so I think it's, to take an example of where it is both good and bad, is we go from Joe Grant about to do some research on plastic factories to turning up at a specific plastic factory. We go from seeing a daffodil to all of a sudden have this set of people going about, and I still don't really understand why they're in the bus doing it that way. It seems greatly inefficient. But it suddenly, not only have we produced daffodil, but it's ready to go. It's really quick. Again, this is this cartoon aspect of it, and I think that's the problem and the success of this. At the same time, I can see why people watch it a lot, because it, as I said earlier, I think it needs a bit more padding because it doesn't quite gel, because it seems to go down that route too much.
Okay, Michelle, where do you stand on this one, on standout moments or low points?
I think the standout moments are just how Joe and the Doctor's relationships very quickly kind of goes for I don't want you, but then you see this very fondness. I love how they're developing a rapport pretty quickly together. They have great chemistry together. I also love the Doctor and the Brigadier just arguing with each other. Where there's a fondness to each other, and yeah, they kind of sometimes lowbrow insult each other, but there's always like a charm and a love behind it. Versus we're kind of arguing with is the current incarnation cruel to be cruel's sake. And so there's that. There's a couple, there's a couple quick shots that just make absolutely no sense. Like 1 minute, and she changes her costume where she's like, we're talking about a plastic, and then all of a sudden she's there. It's like, how did this happen? How did this happen? But and then was it Benton gets shot, and then you don't see him for a while, and then you see him later back at the quarry. He's like, okay, what happened here? But beyond that, these are just like small little niggles of nitpicking. Have a really good episode.
Okay, Brian, same thoughts.
All right, I'll give you some good and bad. The action sequence at the quarry after they got out of that police car, fantastic.
Oh yeah,
that's the kind of action that you don't see on Doctor Who very often, and it's a shame because
it's like the Sweeney. It was like real stunt car chase stuff. It was great.
It worked so well, and the budget to do that kind of thing is minimal compared to the special effects that they're doing nowadays. Special effects don't mean anything unless you've got something of substance behind them, and in this case you didn't even need that kind of stuff. A good stunt man. Terry was fantastic. Other standout scenes for me probably would have been just the unmasking of the policeman. It's interesting that they didn't go with the mannequin shop dummies in this. The Master actually, they had redesigned a new plastic Auton, which were almost just as scary, or just as scary, period, because they were humanoid, but they had no facial features. So that was disturbing in itself as well. Although I do have to say I think I had one gripe and one continuity error that I only just noticed when I watched it last week. The Doctor is wearing a burgundy colored jacket right there in the first episode, and then for the remaining three, it's I think it's blue. Yeah, that color there. Yeah, it changes for no reason. They never. I don't know. Nobody else is. Who knows? But my biggest gripe with this is the overuse and really bad CSO. I just have to suspend disbelief every time I see it. I mean, even Joe at the phone booth telling the Doctor that he's at the circus. And I'm like, you couldn't have shot that at a real phone booth while you were on location.
Well,
Things
what we'll
like
do,
that.
we'll, I mean, when we look at criteria 2 on production values, we can have a look at the CSO engagement. John, where do you stand on highlights, lowlights of
if it's all possible, when we come to discuss that bit, if you let me come back on that, because I accept the fact, I agree with Brian about what it looks like, but there were reasons why it happened the way it did, but we'll come back to that. We'll park that now and maybe come back to it. Yeah, one of my standout moments as I'm watching this in terms of saying directorial choice, I'm very fond of Barry Letts as the director, is when he does the whole dissection of the plastic troll doll, and we don't get to see him cut it open. It's just a lump of plastic. But Barry Letts chooses to be quite prissy about this and suggests that no, we shouldn't see this scalpel go into this lump of. I mean, he basically says it's just plastic all the way through. Show us. Don't tell us. Show us.
I think it may have been too difficult to do that.
Yeah.
No, again, I think the intention was that we shouldn't show a sharp object going in to the child's doll. We're just showing a doll strangle someone or bite someone in the neck. So why are you being prissy about putting a scalpel into the back of the thing? It just choices like that are silly. The biggest bugbear I have about Terror of the Autons, I know we're loving it is the end in the observatory in the pre-Logopolis control room, where for no apparent reason the Master, after two lines of the Doctor, changes sides. It's just all a bit too off pat and quick, and that really shouldn't happen. Somebody somewhere, I'm thinking of you, Terence, should have said, no, hold on, we got to. He used to say, cover it with a line. So he could have covered earlier on in the episode, or earlier on in episode 3, he could have said something, laid the foundation for something that would have led to the Master's quick conversion at the end. It just comes across as the script requires the Master to change sides, so change sides he shall. And even as a youngster, I think that jars. So that's the thing I've got going on about the things that
I really
I love the, to be positive for a second, I love the action sequence. That is so atypical for Doctor Who. Really, up to that point, John Pertwee introduces a whole new level to the thing. But even this is standout, even for Doctor Who at that time, in terms of the intricacies and the quality. As you said, it could have been the Sweeney, and for viewers abroad, the Sweeney is a very it was a 70s, very action-packed cop show, which people my age at the time weren't allowed to watch.
Shut it!
There were too many boobies in it, too.
I do think that there is I agree with you on the resolution thing there, which was unfortunate because the first time you come across the Master, he's left with some sort of booby trap for the Doctor up there. And then right at the end, just to get, like you say, 1 or 2 lines. And it when he's with the Sea Devils, when he does Claws of Axis, he's also dealing with aliens. So, I mean, they were going to repeat the same kind of plot device so many times.
It happened more than once, and it really is unforgivable. The fact that for a program which treats children in a very grown-up way, that doesn't treat the children respectfully. The viewer, the child viewing that, and at the same point, it undercuts the character of the Master. You know, I dare say somewhere along the line they were saying, well, this is how quickly he's so self-centered, so self-interested that he will go in the moment, change signs just for his own self-preservation. But it doesn't come across that way. And Terror 6 is very good at covering it with a line, and that could have been seeded elsewhere in the episode.
We've got the Autons on screen, and I think we could jump to the Autons for a moment, because part of your enjoyment of the story, if you are going to enjoy the story, is the return of the Autons. Having seen them in Spearhead from space, they obviously had an effect on RTD to bring them back in Rose. What was interesting is their manifestations. You've mentioned that they look different in the police car, so to speak, their face, etc. You've got this version, you've got the troll doll, you've got the plastic chair. Number one,
Dudley toy.
yeah, I know. Jamie asked me, have they made a character options of the troll doll? I said, really? I'm not sure. Do you think the Autons deserve to come back? Because remember, it's always a dicey game to do that. The second thing is whether they really did ramp it up, because Spearhead from Space has a lovely kind of vibe to it, and everybody was scared of the Autons in that. So when you see them here, did they ramp it up? You know, that the danger of the sequel, so to speak. So Michelle, where do you stand on this one? Do you think the Autons were executed well coming back in this one?
I think they were, because it's in the same kind of era that they were first created, and they're creepy. They're creepy with these little things coming alive and coming to kill you and asphyxiate you. And the guy got eaten by a chair. Come on, that's just like creepy. So I thought they're well executed. Now, should they come back again? I'm not so much sure about how the current era will deal with classic era monsters and villains. So I am more, let's leave it be.
It's interesting because I remember most of us were on the panel when we reviewed Rose, and I made the point that the Autons were now attractive mannequins, and it's like,
yeah.
I don't know if that makes it creepier or worse. I mean, Hugh, is it welcome to see the use of the Autons again? Do they live up to the title, The Terror of the Autons?
So, again, I think this is part of the problem with it being cartoon-like, is the telephone call isn't terrifying. The spray of death with the daffodils isn't terrifying. The otter on the safe is clever. The little dolls doesn't really work for me in terms of that. It's been done better on other things. There's too many of them, so there's not a consistency there, and I think it's Rob Holmes putting in too many ideas and not having them weeded out. So.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? I'm holding back at the moment because I actually think there has so many highlights in this one. But however, Brian, where do you stand on the return of the Autons and their execution?
Definitely, it was a bring back villain. They were fantastic. I thought, yeah, second chance, and I think they did pull it off brilliantly. I actually do disagree with Hugh. I kind of like the fact that in the original one, mannequin, that was your only fear. Stay away from mannequin. But in this one, it could literally be anything. The daffodil, actually, I thought was a really great idea. Something so simple. And all you had to do was put your face to it at the wrong time, and you're going to suffocate to death. That was a horrible idea. And I mean terrifying, not horrible. And even with the carnival masks, not only is that kind of creepy in itself, but it was also a great cost-saving measure. Because I imagine it did cost a fair bit to make those the standard Auton masks. So having them put these carnival masks on instead was a great way to keep the budget down. But they're still kind of creepy. I mean, just look at that. They would otherwise be friendly. People are afraid of clowns.
John, I'd have loved them in Just on Frontier. Like the giants running around doing something.
We can still talk about Just on Frontier. It's a knockout we can't talk about. That's been cancelled. So can I just say about the we've referenced the plastic flowers a couple of times now. Yeah. I'm with Brian on this one. I think it's a great thing. Particularly at the time, there were soap powder companies giving away free plastic flowers. And people had these in their homes. So Robert Holmes, being the absolute swine that he was trying to make something every day and make people frightened of it. So that's why
terrify the kids that the thing that mom brought home from the market is going to kill them all.
Yes, it was. Yeah, and just this idea that there's nowhere for the little beggars to go hide. That there's danger around every single corner. So that's the reason why. And Hugh's also right in terms of the sort of as a means of destroying the population and gaining control. It doesn't make any sense at all. It's a completely inefficient way of doing that. Why just drop a few gas cylinders in the country and let everybody suffocate that way? But it just makes it great entertainment. So it's all to the good. My big thing about Terror of the Autons as opposed to Spearhead and Spaces, I think the actual Autons themselves don't look as creepy. I prefer Spearhead Autons with the scarf and their faces are blanker. That just really, really to this day still gets me. Look at that. I mean, my goodness. Oh, yeah. That's like one of these reality shows when plastic surgery goes horribly wrong. That's what it is. Whereas there's a bit more features. You can see the shape of a nose, eyes, mouth there. That was almost like a molten wax dummy. It's really, really creepy. And so I think it lost a little something there, and I'm just a big fan of the mannequins. But the problem is, I'm sorry to go on so long, but the problem is with the sequel is, unless you make Friday the 13th, every single movie is the same. It's just a group of teenagers arriving, they're bumped off one by one. If you want to have a sequel, you've got to try and top it, change it, make it different to build in longevity to that particular franchise, part of the whatever creature you've created. And Robert Holmes does that in spades. So no one can accuse him at all in this of just repeating a formula, of being formulaic. In fact, he overstuffs it with ideas, you might say, and a lot of stuff that could have been used for a further sequel in the Pertwee years is perhaps used all in the one story. So I think this does what a proper sequel should do if it wants to build longevity into the creation of the first one, which is to diversify and do different things with it. Because had there been a third one, they could have gone back to mannequins and shot window dummies had they wanted to. There's a whole thing you could have done in Madame Tussauds there, which was a really throwaway thing in Spearhead Space, which really would have got me terrified and running from the sofa.
Well, one feature I would like to do really when we do these reviews is actually, how scary was it? The fear factor there. Now, whether you prefer that Auton or this Auton, as John referred to, or you actually just want to say, well, good old Doctor Who when it really scares you to death. So on the fear factor, folks, when you really do look at those 4 episodes, it is called Terror of the Autons. So, does it deliver on what it says on the tin? For my Tuppennyworth, I thought actually the moment with the daffodil and the plastic on Joe's face is horrific, actually. Now, I had asthma attacks as a kid. I was in hospital a lot with oxygen masks on, fighting for breath, nearly died once or twice. And I have to say, that is horrible to watch. And it's interesting to even do as an acting thing, to have that plastic there. I think that's gruesome. I'm amazed it didn't get more complaints. I know there were complaints from Scotland Yard about a police officer being an Auton, and it was mentioned in Parliament. But as a kid, the policeman being an Auton, brilliant. The fear factor for me was actually not having good-looking mannequins or even recognizable mannequins. I actually do think, in my personal opinion, this kind of version where you can't see any eyes and it's like this stretched skin, I do think these are brilliant. I can't knock those Autons at all. But this kind of quality, I thought is really scary when they pull that mask off. I hate that their voices scared me to death when they're in the Auton bus, so to speak. I think the Master always thrilled me as a kid, scared me to death. And it was the fact that he was always so kind of calm. As I've always said about the John Sin stuff later and Sasha, the shouty doesn't work for me. It's that clinical, cold, ruthless quality with a smile on his face. So on my version of the fear factor, I just thought I had loads there. And I'm just checking. Yeah, Auton voice. Oh God. Oh, I'll mention it in a minute. Anyway, Hugh, on the fear factor, do you think it's high, low, middle, on where you would say this is good?
I think it's high. I think sort of it gets undercut by things like the telephone cable, which and tonally it gets undercut. So the Brigadier's reaction to the telephone cable is a joke. The reaction, Farrell's reaction to the death in the chair is a joke, and I think that undercuts it. And I think tonally it doesn't quite work because Holmes is playing a very difficult game in terms of that. So I think that the ideas are there. I think generally they're done well. I just think that the story doesn't always hold together because Robert Holmes is Robert Holmes.
Aye. Michelle?
Actually, I think it's the gallows humor that kind of works, because that is very much, especially with military or policemen, to do a gallows humor joke with, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I cut your connection." He goes, "Oh, very fun, very funny," and that stiff upper lipness of his character of not melting down under pressure. For me, the scariest is the Master, because he's so controlled, but you see that he wants to kill everybody in that room and would enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
You see the murder in his eyes and his coldness but at the same time, he's so proper and so polite. And so that is just freaky.
And this is the first time. I mean, I've got a list here of the murders. Gooch was killed. The weapon that makes the Master famous.
And this is Delgado's first outing as the Master.
Yeah.
And he nails it.
McDermott in the plastic chair. Farrell Sr. strangled by a gargoyle. We had plenty of murders there. Brian, fear factor for you.
Absolutely. They did a great job. Great job. I think the first one being that ripping off of the mask, the fight scene at the quarry. I didn't like the doll. I know nobody likes the CGI updated effects, but if anybody has seen it, it was actually quite a lot scarier because there was just no laughability to it. Like, this is just too ridiculous. The daffodils, like you said, Brendan, that's a horrific idea of you suddenly going from smelling a flower to suffocating to death. That was really well done. The design of the Autons, they're humanoid, but they faceless. Incidentally, and that works so well I doubt it was intentional. But when John Carpenter made Halloween and they did that to the William Shatner mask, exactly the same thing. No facial expression, just blank and scary as heck. You know, it's just the way to go. They did an excellent job. Even when they were wearing the carnival masks, they were creepy. And that voice that they had with the ring modulator, which was their go-to effect processor for almost every alien. I was surprised to hear an Auton talk, but it was really well done, really well done. And the fact that they almost didn't care for the master at one point. They were saying, "We are leaving," and Farrell, little Davros himself, said, "We have to wait," and they kind of relented and said, "We will wait a little while longer." They almost,
to me,
they didn't care about the master at all.
I mean,
their
John,
plans were working.
John, it reminded me of a school trip from hell on the school bus, and the kids are in charge, and the Autons are going, "We do what we want." Anyway, John.
I want to wait for the second bag to be passed around at some point, and that usually somebody's mother has packed them off with far too much chocolate and crisps,
and lemonade.
Yeah, and then they do all that. Yeah, it's funny listening to that. That's fascinating listening to that because there's a fear factor there, Terror of the Autons, but interestingly, I think it's a different sort of fear from the fear you get in Spearhead from Space. This is more a psychological death lurks around every corner and objects which you might have in your home, like the teddy that you take to bed, the daffodil that you sniff from a local soap company, the seat, the funky seat that now exists in your lounge, all these sort of stuff. Whereas Spearhead from Space is more a stalking menace. And it's fascinating that Brian mentions Halloween because that's exactly... Halloween is my favorite horror movie of all time. I just think it's fabulous. I can watch it again and again and do annually. And I never tire of it because inbuilt into that is just, it never dates. It's a faceless, featureless, blank threat stalking at a very slow speed towards you. And that in itself just terrifies me. I found that terrifying. But the terror of the Autons is a different sort of terror. As I say, it's about that death could lie just a sniff away, or a seat away, or a telephone call away. All these sort of different things going on. That doesn't scare me as much. So if I want real proper terror, it exists for me in Spearhead from Space. But that's a personal choice.
Yeah. So that was our fear factor. Now, straight from that, so it's another quick item, is the cliffhangers, key or twee. We all do hate a cliffhanger that's just there for clickbait, just to get you to watch the next episode, and it's solved in an instant. Now, the 3 cliffhangers we had for this one, just to remind you very quickly, episode 1 was Jo trying to open the bomb, but she was hypnotized. Episode 2 was the police Auton reveal. And episode 3 was the doctor being wrapped in a phone cable, which was originally going to be the Brigadier. Now, I think the best cliffhanger they missed. I think the best cliffhanger would have been that Auton in the safe. I think that is like a jump cut. That moment he opens the safe and there's an Auton. Whoa, I think that is how you'd have done a cliffhanger. I personally think. But to answer my own question before I come to all of you on key or twee, I would say each cliffhanger really, really did seem to fit with the plot. Dead easy to solve, I suppose, when the Brigadier cut the cable. That's
Can I just say, Brendan, just that one thing when talking about Pertwee cliffhangers, at every stage, what should have been avoided is a cliffhanger that needed Pertwee to gurn because it just undercuts the whole thing. So the end of part 3 cliffhanger is totally wasted because Pertwee really, his face is doing all that sort of stuff. And it happens again in other cliffhangers too. So I wish they'd gone with the original choice and made it either, as you say, the sake of the Brigadier or the Brigadier being attacked by the phone wire, because I think that would have avoided that Pertwee gurn, which doesn't do anybody any favors.
Which he did when the Nestines attacked him in Spearhead. He had the same kind of element going on then.
It happens regularly, yeah. Throughout.
You could argue Chris Eccleston was trying to do the same gurning as the Ninth Doctor, because he unfortunately couldn't quite smile and do something like that. But on this pattern of key or tweak cliffhangers, are there any cliffhangers that you think, no, this is when Doctor Who gets it right or totally gets it wrong? If I come to you, Hugh.
The second one, the one with the mask reveal, I think works perfectly. That's exactly what you want because you've got the switch. The first one's a bit too easily solved, and that the third one, I say I don't like, because apart from anything else, if anything can attack you, then cutting the line doesn't make any difference, and that undercuts the terror. So second one's much better than the other two.
Okay, and I will stick with the cliffhanger that was missed. Michelle, what are your thoughts? I know we're getting an array of your pet pal.
Yeah, you got Violet and Mrs. Bell, and Rose is down here playing. I think the second one was the best, and Bell agrees too. That the second one was the best of the police car, because here they are. They're in the back of a car. The car is driving to a court where they don't know where they're at. And then all of a sudden they realize that they are trapped with two of their enemies, the villains. That's creepy. How are they going to get out of this?
But can I just say on that one? I'm not on the episode 2. Cliffhanger. They're in the back of the car. Joe is the one who says, I think there's something wrong here, so to speak. The Doctor, unfortunately, is in that self-obsessed mode with his, he's got the circuit from the Master's TARDIS, and he's faffing with it, and he's not alert. It's almost like the Doctor in Rogue couldn't give a toss about his companion and safety. He was so self-obsessed with getting off the planet, and it took Joe in that cliffhanger to say, there's something wrong here, and then he takes charge.
To be fair, though, I think that's really good for Joe Grant's role, and given the fact that they have only just met, I think that one's actually justifiable that way. It's not like Rogue because it's not. It's not someone. It's not someone going off for a quick shag.
Yay! In the bushes.
And also, the Doctor is hard. He is selfish. And this is through the work of the companions to bring him back to Earth, so to speak, or to be aware of other feelings. And again, the Doctor is still getting used to his forced, being stuck at Earth. He's bored silly. I love the beginning where he's like, I don't want to set the world on fire. I think that was brilliant.
Well, he's at Inferno.
And very insensitive considering he just got out of Inferno.
Exactly.
Yeah. He needs the companion to keep him in check. He needs the companion. It's like I love with the 12th Doctor the cards, and he's like, I am sorry for the loss of your friend /
It's a slippery slope, Michelle. It's a slippery slope.
I loved it.
The Doctor needs companions. He suddenly has to cry when Ruby Sunder leaves.
No,
but anyway,
it's the balance. He still needs the alien, but he needs also the companion.
So again, I think you're guilty of doing something because the U series is so ingrained in this nonsense that we spoke about, be it Rogue or the rest of it. We're now looking back at something that happened and thinking, oh, was that a little sign or foretelling of things to come? Essentially, this Doctor is a very selfish Doctor and it's ultimately his selfishness that leads to his demise in Planet of the Spiders. So he is engrossed in that. So if you're looking for a character arc, this was one way before they were referred to as character arcs. So he is doing what the Doctor does. He's engrossed in something. And Jo Grant is proving, by virtue of her alertness, her reasons why she should be a companion to the Doctor. Because the Doctor's not a superhero. He's not always alert, always on it, always omnipresent. He's fallible. And as a result of this particular Doctor's fallibility and his engrossing in what he thinks is going to be his way out of his exile, that he misses a crucial part of this kidnap that's going on and leaves it to Jo, which allows her to develop and build their relationship too. So I'm all for that.
So Brian, cliffhangers, favorite one, Mistrix.
Favorite one, same as everybody else. What was it? The second one, with the ripping off of the mask in the car. The first one was like it was kind of bland. It was like, oh, it's a bomb. We know they're gonna solve that one somehow, and that's the thing. We know they're gonna solve it. But with the second one, they're in a moving car, and they tear off the mask, and now what are you gonna do? You're in a moving car.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have much place to go. And the thing that really bothered me about that third one was not just because, I mean, obviously, I think it was the video run in reverse so that it looked like the cord was wrapping around him. I don't know how they did it exactly. And then they just, they pull it off and then run it in reverse. But what I didn't like is that muffled, that he did in Terra in the original Spearhead. That bothered me to no end. But what bothered me even more was when they went to episode 4, Brigadier's walking down the hall, and you just hear, "Brigadier, help!" I thought, I was like, suddenly you can talk now? And that was just so out of character for the Doctor. He never uses that particular tone of voice. Never. That one was the worst, absolute worst. But number 2 was fantastic.
So to wrap up then, John.
You're getting unanimity here, but I'll tell you the reason why I think episode 2 works best as a cliffhanger. Apart from the fact you get the big scare and the reveal of the Auton. Episode 1's cliffhanger, episode 3's cliffhanger, ultimately are cliffhangers because we're getting towards the end of the episode and we need a cliffhanger, and they're easily resolved a few minutes later. What happens at the end of episode 2 is that, in addition to getting the scare of the cliffhanger, is you wonder what is going to happen next. The plot changes. The Doctor and Jo are now inadvertently in the hands of the Autons. So it's not just the scare you get, it's a question of, right, how is this going to be resolved? How does this change and move the plot on, as indeed it does now? As it turns out, it is resolved pretty quickly, but that's by the by. But just as a proper cliffhanger, which has the potential to move things on and change the plot, it really functions much better than the other 2, which are there just as cliffhangers.
And my finish on this is, when you actually look at all of the cliffhangers together, you realize, it's too intricate. This is a plan that the Master's plan is, I'm going to do this, then that plan doesn't work. Then there's a second plan and trap. Then there's this third trap. No, get on with it. It's fun. But as some of you have said, it falls into comic strip. It's the perils of Batman sort of thing. It's kind of bang, 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 bang. Whereas I will contest that the best cliffhanger for its integrity would have been just opening that blooming vault door and just seeing him there, because that wasn't part of a plan. But anyway, I know what you're saying. Episode 2 is a famous one, very famous, and it's classic Doctor Who. It's the reveal. It's the Sontaran taking his helmet off.
And got the program into trouble. Very much got the program into trouble.
And it should do, for the right reasons.
Yes.
For the right reasons.
Okay, guys, I love the part where they throw the bomb out at the beginning of episode 2, and was it Ben or Yates goes, "Neighbor, we're going to get complaints on that one." When they blow it out, and you hear the seagulls.
You aren't very good at remaining top secret if they're throwing bombs.
Yeah, but I love that. He goes, "We're going to get complaints on that one." Again, that's that gallows humor that I think is hysterical. It's like, we're going to make neighbors mad again.
Yeah, but that's not just gallows humor. That's Robert Holmes doing meta humor. That's effectively breaking the fourth wall in that way. And it's very clever because it breaks the fourth wall if you know about it. But if you didn't know they were getting complaints for this sort of thing, then it doesn't break the fourth wall.
So how's it breaking the fourth wall for those who don't, like me?
Because what it's doing is saying, we are going to get complaints about this because we get complaints about cliffhangers. For the violence. For whatever reason, it's saying the Doctor Who production team are going to get complaints about this because we always get complaints about this. And I think it's written exactly like that because that's what Robert Holmes does.
Well, we're now going to get complaints because I'm going to do this, and it's the controversial item. Here we go.
Oh no!
Oh yeah!
Oh yeah, baby!
Oh yes, that's this is why you came, John. So I'll rattle through these because there's, remember, there's two ways of doing it. You can have the shooty doctor's joke element, or you can actually talk about the scene, because of course there's some interesting scenes here. This first one, of course, is the Joe helping the doctor out, she thinks, and then he turns and calls her a ham-fisted bun vendor.
Bun vendor.
Yeah,
But I think what Shitty would have said is, "Are you fisting my buns, you ham vendor?"
Oh,
well, oh, very good.
5
The edit
points.
fails again. I have to say the language on the ham-fisted bun vendor. What?
So I honestly think that must have been a bet for Robert Holmes to get that comment in. I'm sure someone said it to a tea lady at some point
Yes,
in the
BBC,
production, and they said, "You'll never get that on," and Holmes put that in because that's what it feels like. It's one of those things. It's a bet.
That was a
don't
very
insult
good
a woman
response.
that carries scalding hot tea. Okay, you don't want to have a McDonald's coffee incident.
I think
Don't forget, Soldeed, you meddlesome hussy. Absolutely ridiculous.
Yes.
And I love it.
Shooty
I have a t-shirt.
Shooty would have loved to have been in some of those old episodes because they're so camp. But on this one, yeah, okay. This is part of the introduction of Joe Grant, of course, that she was trying willingly to help out. He goes mad about it because she wrecked the experiment. But she shows willing and she shows initiative. Of course, the Shooty doctor would have said, "I have grown because of you. I'm a bigger person because of you being here and doing that. Thank you. I'm learning all the time." But I think I can't beat what Hughes just said on that one. That was a really.
I don't think any of us can.
No, tea time. So this one, the doctor's driving Bessie. I just want to keep making the blooming point because obviously in the Empire of Death, the Shooty doctor suddenly can't drive and he needs somebody else to drive for him. But you try and get John Pertwee off Bessie. I mean, is it possible?
No, he loves Bessie.
Yeah,
Bessie is his true girlfriend.
Yeah, can you see the John Pertwee doctor giving the keys to his Hoomobile to Sarah? No, not a chance in hell. What about this one then? There's so many different angles.
You would have enjoyed
Well,
that.
listen. That's a very unfortunate choice of photograph. If we're now putting Shooty Gatwa in place of Pertwee, I might riot here.
Yeah, well, that's not why I did it.
Yes, it is. Don't do that. Yes, it is.
It isn't.
You're cheap.
I was thinking of the church on Newby Road. Actually.
No, you weren't.
You
weren't.
Shooty's doctor. You know when Shooty's doctor was tied up and he was talking about the language of ropes.
No, I thought you were talking about that bit when it goes up the
Goblin King.
I get confused again.
I wasn't thinking of that, but no, it was just the classic.
Before or after he spent the long hot summer with Houdini.
Well, and it worked. It paid off. But this was the beauty of Joe, because I mean, I've got one shot in the corner there. I loved actually the Joe Grant companion in lots of stories, Carnival of Monsters, loads of them, where she's good at getting out of rope knots and everything. She's a kleptomaniac. She always grabs keys. She's good at, in the Sea Devils. She's a good companion in that way. She's cheeky. She's got so much initiative. And I think it works. And that shot of the doctor looking at her in the glass on the outside of the caravan actually takes me to Smith and Jones with Tennant and Donna Noble. You know, that when they kept looking at each other. Great comedy. And you could just see they were working so well. But I like that scene just because you think, oh, the Shooty doctor, language of ropes and all that twaddle.
Also, you realize what great chemistry Manning and Pertwee had right off the bat. I know they rehearsed together before that, but really, this is their first outing together, and you really see how fond he is. At one point, he even goes and tucks her on the cheek, very, paternally. But you see how great a dynamic they already had, and then you see that, in real life, they had a beautiful friendship.
And apparently, she did sprain her ankle in this. You know, the joke is that companions always sprain their ankles. She sprained her ankle. One of the production team joked that she's probably lost the job, and John Pertwee took that production assistant apart.
Yeah. He
Good
was
for John
very
Pertwee.
protective of his female co-stars.
Yeah.
He did the right thing. He did the right thing.
I think you have to. Lots of people complain about the fact that Joe Grant's stupid. She really isn't.
No, she's
No.
not yet.
She's very clever, and Katy Manning does a marvelous job of doing that in this by being disingenuous enough, but knowing what she's doing. It's like watching Judy Holliday or Marilyn Monroe.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
she's not stupid. I think she's naive, and and again, taking away from the new series, who seems to think the new Who, he seems to think that it's the only time character development happened in Doctor Who. Again, Jo is a character who has an arc. She grows. She not only grows physically, but grows emotionally and mentally at time with the Doctor. And to the extent that they do a wonderful thing when she leaves, where she gets to repeat the same scene with her husband-to-be in The Green Death, Clifford Jones, as she did with the Doctor, but with different results and all built into that. So I've never bought into this notion that character arcs and character development only ever happened in New Who. Yeah, they're very good at it and better at it, perhaps, or they certainly do more often than New Who did. But Jo Grant as a companion is certainly a standout companion who, apart from not having an arc, that she belies this notion that she was ditzy and blondie and all this. Absolutely not.
Now, this one is, of course, Phillips, who had a suicide bomb on him, really, and was about to, blow them all to smithereens. The Doctor, as you see on the right there, very strong, very resolute. John Pertwee at his peak when he's actually telling somebody off, be resolute, and fight it. Whereas it takes me to the Ncuti Doctor in Boom, standing on a landmine and crying. Yeah. And you think, this is what everybody wants, surely, from their hero, to show leadership, bravery, thinks on their feet, doesn't look paralyzed with indecision. And I have to do this, Boom's Doctor versus the Doctor here, when he may be blown up any second.
Yeah, even when the scene from Genesis, the Daleks, to go off a tangent for a second, which Boom apparently is based on, the Doctor's joking with Harry Sullivan, and as it happens, I honestly don't know what they're up to with this particular incarnation of the Doctor, the 15th Doctor. I don't know the vibe they're trying to go. I just don't get it. I don't buy into it. I don't understand what it is they're trying to do. But you're quite right. What the Doctor shows here is absolutely what the Doctor should do. He's appealing to the humanity of this man. Mm-hmm. Rather than indulging in his own emotions and his own how he thinks about how the moment's panning and how it's affecting him, the Doctor. And that's where they're getting it so wrong with the current incarnation of the Doctor.
Yeah, and this works. The next one I found, I'm going to get in there fast before I forget, but when the big reveal, most of you liked as the best cliffhanger, when he peels that, there's jeopardy and there's danger and all the rest of it. But I would have thought the Ncuti Doctor would have actually thought, hold on, you remind me of one of the dolls in Barbie. I used to be a Ken doll, and I think he would have introduced himself. I am also a doll. I'm also plastic. Hi.
Okay, I'm just glad that that's the doll you're going for, that he recognizes. Because my brain was going somewhere else, and it's like, I'm going to go purge myself for that thought.
Yeah, you see, I can keep it going. Unlike Hugh, he always goes there, Hugh, just dips there with his...
Shocking.
It's plastic, it's fantastic, obviously.
Trademark Hugh. If it's plastic, it's fantastic.
This was an interesting bit. Obviously, they're trying to develop units and they're trying to develop the Brigadier's relationship with the Doctor. We understand Nicholas Courtney's situation in this filming, but the Doctor is actually just taking the mick, sarcastic. You remember he was bored and he was off into the TARDIS, and then The brigadier calls him back. No, I carry on. It's most interesting. I thought, and then he kept interrupting him and undermining the brigadier in front of his staff, saying, that's quite obvious what you're saying. That's quite obvious. The Ncuti doctor, as you know, is really into units. He uses them as his toy. He just lands there saying, can you open that vault? Can you do this? Hi, Kate, babes. It's a very different concept. Whereas this one, as you've said, I remember, Hugh, ages ago, gosh, when we started doing these things, when we talked about, you've got an opinion on the military and the use of the military in Doctor Who. And of course, the doctor undercutting the brigadier, I suppose, serves some value.
Yeah, so I suppose there are two things. Obviously there's the whole aspect of this, as Paul Cornell did, the doctor's a Tory in this, in terms of that. And some of that, I think, undercutting the military is because he looks down on them, both in the Tory sense of it, and also in the sense of being a Time Lord. I think it does make it better, though, than the previous one, where they were mainly scientific, because I don't think that works, because it's not enough of a challenge. So I think there's a thing where the doctor is careful of the relationship, but at the same time, unfortunately, Nicholas Courtney is such a good actor, and the Brigadier is such a beloved character, that you can't really keep that up for very long.
Yeah. I prefer how the Doctor's relationship is with the unit here than the Ncuti version, where I don't understand what's going on. Final one on this, just if anyone's got anything to throw in. The final bit, we talked about the language being changed, I know, but you look at the shot of the Doctor, and he starts to smile slightly when he sees the Master getting away. And yeah, we get the dialogue later that we've discussed, but in a way, I'm thinking he's more like the Ncuti Doctor here, because the Ncuti Doctor wanted the bogeyman to live. He's a new species. He wanted the white supremacists to be given their own planet in Dot and Bubble. He wants everybody to thrive. And in a way, the third Doctor here was actually wanting somebody who causes evil, death, carnage, and smiles and thinks, yeah, I'm happy for you to continue. So in a way, for once, the 15th Doctor and the third Doctor are slightly similar. Controversial.
I have a response to that.
Of course, go for it.
What would Ncuti's Doctor do?
Well, he does. Oh, here we go. Hold on. Oh no, this is. Let me just have a look. Oh God, you're giving me the giggling moment. You see,
I've been making sure those hands and arms were lined up perfectly.
The waist here, the waist, not the bodice, the waist.
You see, this is it. It's now canon. So there we go. What would the Ncuti Doctor do just to keep us going? So let me kind of get rattling through these.
I think what the dolls do when you're not looking.
We've done an awful lot on the story, but just to make sure we've done it properly. This is still season 8 beginning, isn't it? So it's very interesting when I say true who or boo who. But does anyone add any comments on this one that maybe hasn't been said on whether it fulfills that criteria or whether we move on to criteria 2? Does anyone have any additional?
I think we have to say it's a reboot.
Go on.
Yeah, on you go, John.
Oh.
No, other way around. Why do you go for it?
I just think you have to accept it's a reboot. Within that, yes, it is Doctor Who. A lot of the changes are quite different from previous season. There is the introduction of the Master, etc. But within that, like you accept that and think, yeah, it's trying for something new and slightly different, and that's fair enough.
Yeah.
All I was going to say was, had you asked me at the time, I would have said, no, it doesn't feel like Doctor Who. But mind you, now that it's season 7, but in that season 8, are a lot of the component parts of what ultimately would spread throughout the rest of Doctor Who's time as Classic Who, and indeed going into New Who. It's not, Russell Davies actually said explicitly that he looked at the Barry Letts and Terrence Dicks version in season 8 as a sort of not as a template, but as a guide to what he wanted to do with the program. So at the time, then no, it may well not have felt like the Doctor Who, as brash, as colourful, as cartoonish that we had been used to. Certainly not the year before. But in terms of the groundwork it set, it laid the foundations for what ultimately is what we judge Doctor Who to be today, I think.
Yeah, I find it really interesting because it is now so established in our heads, this, but surely at the time, season 8 beginning and season 7 was so different from 60s Doctor Who, you know, just so different. The Doctor exiled, of course, as a plot device, but then the way that the Doctor works with the establishment is very unusual. So, I mean, I'm trying to play fair in different ways. I know it's so kind of ingrained in us now, the unit years, but if I was a fan from the 60s, I would have thought this is so different, for good or bad, but so different from the Doctor Who I got used to.
But still recognisably Doctor Who. Different, yes, but still recognise the character himself is still very recognisably the Doctor. So you can have a reboot, but although the character of the Doctor can change as the Pertwee incarnation, and he's Pertwee in this is different from the way he is in season 7. He's far lighter, far lighter, the less serious the character he was. He's not as angry, he's not as resentful. Although he's still offhand to the Brigadier unit, he's accepting of his role there, and he has a base, and he's willing to accept that, although he's still fighting to escape it. But it's still recognisably Doctor Who in terms of what the Doctor does and says and all those sort of stuff. He's still got those quirks. Fast forward however many years to now, where this character we're being sold as the Doctor isn't. So when you, by all means, change, by all means, if you like, the location, the surrounding cast, how you might want to tell a story. But the minute you change the character of the Doctor, as they have done now, you're onto a sticky wicket.
So we'll jump to the one that I promised, which is, and sometimes this is the one we kind of overlook a little bit, which is criteria 2, which is the use of the production resources. That's what the question is. So it's not like, we're not saying that season 1 now with the Disney budget, it should win every time just because it's got money. No. With what's available, so CSOs were part of that. With what is available, was it well used to tell the story? So I did say park your thoughts. So this is the moment to talk about CSO, I suppose, to start with. So, I mean, if I wanted to start with, Brian, you raised it first, then over to John on the use of CSO. Is your argument that they really shouldn't have gone down that road or couldn't have done it another way?
Well, I've seen really good CSO and really bad CSO, and this falls into the category of bad. It's just so obviously, it just sticks out like a sore thumb to the point where it's like when I'm watching any movie or Doctor, especially Doctor Who, but really with anything, if I get drawn into it, the last thing I need is something that looks so ridiculous that it pulls me out, and I realize I'm just watching a show. You know, you're so emotionally invested in something, and you're on the edge of your seat, or you're just so interested, and then you see something like this, and it reminds you this isn't real. It kind of takes away.
Is this one of the problems, John, that, you know, when we look back on old Doctor Who, the CSO now is more obviously there because of our TVs now, isn't it? I mean, let's face it, a lot of this was watched in black and white. What are your thoughts on the CSO?
Yeah, I get what Brian's saying. Absolutely. It can't take you out of it, but your point, Brendan, is absolutely well made. We are now looking at on different screens, screens that are in many ways unforgiving of the technology that was available at the time. However, two things about CSO. First of all, CSO is a BBC term. Everybody else called it chroma key, and nowadays they call it green screen or blue screen or whatever it is. At that point, it was very much in its infancy, a year or two. It arrived with colour television. Up until that point, Doctor Who was doing something similar, back projection or inlay, as they called it back then. So similar things had happened. But the reason Barry Letts was so fond of it And the reason why he experimented so much with it, to the extent that, yes, you're right, Brian, it could take you out of it. It was badly done, or some were done better than others. Was he was experimenting with at the time. He was seeing how far he could push this technology. So that's why you end up with a scene like Joe Grant in the phone box and it's CSO'd in, or the Mrs. Farrell kitchen scene.
Oh, that was really bad.
Yeah, to save money, because rather than build a kitchen set, which back in the BBC days, huge expense, Doctor Who's budget, Barry Letts is trying to say, right, okay, can I have a Mrs. Farrell reaction shot with a CSO kitchen behind her? So I still get that idea of scale. She's in the kitchen while this is going on. And how does it look? He himself admitted later on that no, it didn't look great. It didn't look great. And he eventually changed tack. And it does get better as the Pertwee years, depending on the director, mind you, as the Pertwee years move on. But it was very much new technology. It was being experimented with. It was being used to save money too. Because why film a scene which might take you an hour and a half to find a phone box to have Katy Manning phone box when we can do the studio in 5 minutes? So all that sort of stuff is there to do, and a lot of stuff that couldn't be picked up on filming. For example, when the unit are observing the flashing lights from the coach, when the signal is being sent by the Pertwee doctor. Again, that's all done studio with a CSO here or there as well. It's there to save money principally, but I think Barry Letts is experimenting. That's what I'll give him as a get out of jail free card here. He does get better at it. And also, I think your point, Brendan, is very well made in that HD high definition screens are so unforgiving these days.
And the other thing is, I mean, I've just got for an example on the screen, good old unit years of Doctor Who, lots of outside broadcast. So you had some great film footage. You were mentioning earlier, Brian, the car sequence in the quarry. You got proper sequences that are expensive, of course, and therefore the shortcuts have to come somewhere else. I understand, yeah. And I suppose it's that, in 1971, are you glad the car chase is in it, or would you have preferred the telephone box to be in a real
we probably wouldn't have got the police mask reveal at all had it had to be filmed. I'd see a scene not been available to do the car moving scene. We may not have got that scene at all, or had to be carried out differently or a different location. But for the fact that CSO exists and Barry Letts decided we can do this as a moving car scene. So I'm quite forgiving of him. Although, yeah, even at the time it didn't look great. It looks even less great now, but he was a great experimenter with this stuff. He was very, very big and into any new technology for Doctor Who to be the forefront of using it at the BBC.
They could have done more. They could have done more testing, perhaps. Not on the show itself, but just in studio tests to see what looks good, what doesn't look good, so that they could produce the best quality show. And like you say, they did it as they made the show as they went along.
And what to there, Brian, is time. One thing every single producer of Doctor Who, old Who, classic Who said was about time, because at 10 o'clock in a BBC studio, the lights get turned on because of union control. The lights get turned on, everything stopped. So at times they had to accept second best.
And also, this is the first series block of a whole entire season. They have to save money for the end, and the end is the demon. So you have to have money left over by the end of the season, and you're already doing things like the quarry scene and stunts, and then the fight at the observatory where there's explosions going on. So you have to save a corner somewhere.
I mean,
there's things. Oh. I'm so into this now.
All right, yeah. Talking about stunts, believe it or not, if you see that shot there,
what would the shooting doctor do here?
Well, yeah,
we don't want to know.
I don't think we'd have got to the stunts. The stuntman's actually laying on the floor there, getting a bit.
Tanning, certainly.
He's suntanning. John Pertwee's discreetly looking the other way.
Well, he's British. He's got to get it somewhere.
Yeah, I love the way John Pertwee's looking the other way. The woman's looking right at him. Anyway, he is the stunt itself. And if you think of Logopolis, we didn't get a stunt like this at all. If you think
No, we
about
did
it,
not. No, we didn't.
And
No.
the other shots where John Pertwee is playing with the cardboard boxes that they put to
Yep.
muffle his shot, and that's a technique they still use today.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and take a look at that. So there's the stunt. I mean, this is money and time and getting it right. So there you go. I mean, can you imagine that? That's the stunt man just sunbathing there, waiting for his moment, and then
trousers more like.
I tell you what, and John, that's a hell of a drop.
Oh, this stunt is almost on par, very close to the one in Inferno when he fell off the top of that tower.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most insane stunt I have ever seen on this show.
Yeah. But you know, also in terms of that particular stunt, that a real memory for me is the absolute look of violent evil on the Master's face as he commits this man to his death. Really, it's probably the most violent you'd ever see the Master ever throughout the entire run of the show. It's scary stuff, and I think again showing that this character is one not to be meddled with, which is a shame that come the end, a few minutes later towards the end of episode 4, they undercut him so much with the silly ending about switching sides.
So I kind of, so my view of Criteria 2 and how I would judge it is the outside broadcast added atmosphere, the circus and all the rest of it. The stunts add such a level of jeopardy and menace, as we've just said. So, and there's the CSO argument. There are criticisms. Now, I'm going to say this now because the Radio Times mentions it in the review at the time. The experimental music, they call it, of Dudley Simpson and Brian Hodgson, the Master intro that's very famous, but the Radio Times calls it tired, that it's already overused. Anyway, your thoughts on the music, the Master intro that's so famous?
This review, is it written retrospectively? Was it written at the time?
I tried to get a date on it. I can't get a date on it. It's not
because I don't see how you can say it's tired, because that was really Dudley doing his electronic best at that point. Like Dudley really hadn't been given access to all the bells and whistles that he had, because season 7 didn't sound like that. Season 8 has a sound scape all to itself. So
I actually agree with the Radio Times assessment. Aside from a few, like the Master theme, when they have little drops like that, they do them very well. But what I found very annoying throughout a lot of John Pertwee's tenure was the experimental synthesizer. I don't know if it was a Moog synthesizer or not, but it almost sounds like he's just going up and down at random on the keyboard. And just making all these crazy sounds, but at the same time it's almost music, but it just sounds too far out there to be. It just doesn't work for me.
Dudley's much better when he gets to Tom Baker when he's using a small orchestra. Yeah, I quite agree with you. The only point I was trying to make there was you may have liked it, not liked it. I'm not necessarily a fan, but I wouldn't have described it as tired, because it was the first time really that we were hearing it. That description, I think.
I'm trying to work out whether I'm trying to think if they're incorporating what was done in season 7. I'm not. I tried to get a date on it. It's not a contemporaneous review, but it's not of the. I don't know when. But but it is interesting because as you know, Sea Devils was my intro to Doctor Who. But the Sea Devils music, I'm going to sound sacrilege. It's not for me. I would almost like them to change it in a retcon. Whoa.
No.
But maybe I shouldn't have said that out loud. I've lost all.
Interestingly, the Sea Devils provided by Malcolm Clark, who was one of the great season 18 and beyond composers used by John Nathan Turner. To my mind, Malcolm Clark produced one of the best soundtracks ever. Doctor Who, the theme for the Cybermen in Earthshock, and again in the theme for Rassilon and all that in the Five Doctors. So at the same point he's producing the abomination that is the Sea Devils theme, he does come on and do some really good stuff later on.
Right. Criteria 3, we judge on the 3. This is there's no escaping this one. Does it engage? decent resolution, good story. So if we rattle around Hugh.
So, yes, no, curate's egg.
So your nose to the second one on resolution.
Yeah, I mean, as John's already covered in terms of this,
Yeah.
that I say tonally, I find it all over the place. I think there's too much, not enough just not enough padding for it in order to breathe. It is a bit too comic book. I think it's Robert Holmes getting to be Robert Holmes, but not quite getting there. And yeah, there's just bits of it. Yeah, so yes, no, and now and again.
I think John thinks you're doing that. What's that one where he's
Chad.
yeah. He's sinking. Hugh, you're sinking.
Keeps going lower, lower.
I know. He'd be like,
I think that's the first time I've ever seen a shirt collar.
So Michelle, on the if I put it up for a second, just so you can see it again, but obviously engagement, resolution, good story. Where do you stand?
I was engaged, so yes. Happy with the resolution. Good story writing. Yes, it has some cracking dialogue in there.
Okay, Brian.
Excuse me. Actually, I'm saying yes across all three. Very engaged. As far as the resolution goes, the master is just so delighted that it's too late. The Nestines are here, and the doctor says, "Do you really think they're going to be able to distinguish between you and them?" And then the master realizes excuse me, my phone just went off. He realizes he's right. They're not going to know. I'm doomed just like the rest of them. And he helps the doctor to get rid of him. I don't think he necessarily, quote, switches sides. I just think he doesn't want to die. So he does what he has to. Yep, self-serving, exactly. He does what he has to do.
That old blank moment that he realizes he majorly have stepped in it.
I'm with John on it, on the regarding though that this is your introduction to your Moriarty, and after 4 episodes, he's suddenly not very Moriarty at all. Go on, John.
Well, he's
not terribly clever. We're supposed to believe that he's the Doctor's equal, and yet the Doctor spots the fact that he's not going to be treated the same by the Nestines, and he hasn't up to that point. The Doctor tells him it doesn't really make much sense. As I say, my view is that they just had to find a quick and easy way to do that, and they could have turned sticks, could have found a way of prepping that earlier on. But yeah, apart from that, the resolution, and also the resolution effect, the Nestine looks dreadful. It's a little fuzzy. I much prefer the tentacles, but that's a well-known rumor. I've always preferred tentacles. So I go back to Spearhead from Space. Sorry, Michelle.
I'm gonna watch your Netflix viewing activity there.
Well, this episode is going into NC-17.
But the lost my track there, not like me.
Whoa.
But apart from everything else is great about this, really, it is. Robert Holmes is firing away. He's innovating. It's not a stale retread of a sequel. He's lots of new stuff, and he's doing scares, as I said, by doing different types of scares, frightening people differently. And I just don't understand why, given the fact that it was so successful, we didn't get a third Auton anywhere at all in New Who. There was plans latterly in Jonathan Turner's time to have a cameo in the Five Doctors and in Colin Baker's time, but ultimately it didn't happen. But I thought they would have been ripe for a comeback, just based on this sterling sequel, a comeback during the Pertwee era. So yeah, good for me.
Yeah, I would have thought when you look back and play the game, Planet of the Spiders as the climax. I know you needed the Metabellus 3, the atonement of the Doctor, There'd been the joke about the blue crystal for ages, but the Autons would have been a good finish for him, having dominated his era, really. But anyway, just before
it may well have been Delgado's parting that may well have led to that.
Yeah,
it could have been heroes. Who knows?
Right. I'll start the music. Here we go.
Oh,
Sorry. I know. Sorry about that. So there you go, John's. Yeah, you've needed that after a long day.
nurse,
You need
nurse.
So I'll rattle
I'm not
through.
wearing any pants, John.
Listen, I said
All you have
tentacle.
to do is play that music and John just starts stripping. There we are.
I think I said when I made the segment, I knew what the effect it would have on John. I kind of knew. So,
Who knows what'll come off next?
well,
No, we're not turning into a nil gaming convention here. Come on, guys.
let's see if anybody writes to me and says, "Can you do an extended version?" And then we see what comes over. Obviously, Intimacy Watch Season 2, Intimacy Coordinator. You know the score. Again, we can rattle through some of these. The Doctor. Now, let's just remind ourselves the proximity and all the rest of it. But the Doctor's very tender with Jo. She's hypnotized. She's been in shock, and he's to me he's just been paternal. But of course, he is touching her. Oh my God, we need an intimacy coordinator just behind there. Oh, the things you have to think about nowadays. It ruins it, doesn't it? Ruins it. This one. Sorry. This one I wanted to show because, of course, Jo and Mike Yates, well, she went on a date with him. There was supposed to be some sort of thing going on with it during the unit years. They would definitely need an intimacy coordinator just on the set, I think, just to get this right.
I think Jo was whistling Dixie with Mike Yates, don't you?
She's flirting away.
No, I don't think she was on much there. I think Mike might have been looking in the opposite direction.
Well, who knows? Who knows? I feel as I'm doing a Tom Baker. Then there was the lynch mob at the circus, and there's poor Katy Manning in the middle there. Well, I tell you what, you'd have had to have an intimacy coordinator. It always reminds me of that unfortunate moment in Terminus when all the lepers in their hands and Tegan on Nissa's there, and I'm going, I think we could be doing this now.
Yeah.
The same happened.
And actually, while filming that, they actually did pull her top down by accident.
The same happened with Sophie Aldred in Curse of Fenric when she's at the door and all the vampires are reaching out and you think, oh heck. So anyway, I'm just keeping it clean. Censors need to keep an eye on this. And then the unfortunate bit in the that's all right. You know, they're just next to each other. But then suddenly the third Doctor's lifted and carried. I just thought, oh dear.
I saw that. I was like, we're going to talk about this, and then Missy watches his face goes right up against her.
Exactly. So
I don't think
you'll have your eye out with that.
Yeah.
sorry, my dear.
Yeah. Well, you said to have a rapport. My God.
Sorry, my dear. Nothing meant by it.
They're having a rapport on the floor.
They certainly are. Right, judgment time. So, as everybody knows, we have 4 criteria from special measures using the teacher parlance, but that's in England more. So, special measures, which is rubbish, trite, put it in the bin, requires improvement, which I think we did with Power of the Doctor, I think, good overall, and then outstanding. And so we come to myself first. And I have to say, I think in the end, for it being 1971, I'm personally putting down outstanding because they set enough. The template, the Doctor, the Master, the joke companion. These are so iconic in Doctor Who. Unit. I don't know. There's so much going on. And there was a lot of jeopardy. And so and like I said, I'm giving the CSO a free hit because overall I like the outside broadcast stuff and I liked everything else. So overall, I've got that. That's where I stand on this one. So if I pull back to asking it's John next. So John, your judgment of Terror of the Autons.
You'll be very surprised to hear that I very much agree with you and the analysis you gave there. Referring, not special media, that's it, there we go. That's because the we had a discussion about Barry Letts experimenting and how modern eyes, modern TV sometimes is cruel to 1970s television, not just 1970s television, but 1970s British television, which is notoriously cheap anyway. But yeah, if you recognise the fact that the foundations are laid for what effectively becomes Doctor Who from here on in, right up to most of the modern day New Who as well, then you've got to take your hat off to Robert Holmes, Barry Letts, and Terence Dicks in this. Yeah, there's a few clunks in here. Yeah, there's certain things that the ending in particular, in terms of the effect, and indeed the Master's easy conversion, but it's still an outstanding effort, I think, and very much sets the template for what will become the rest of the Pertwee era. So yes, I'm with you, Brendan. Outstanding.
So the pressure's on. So let's jump to Hugh. No, I can't do that. If I did it in that order, that's mad because it's my chronology of my PowerPoint. If you don't mind, sorry, Michelle next. Otherwise, I'm really.
I agree with John. I'm going to go outstanding. Yeah, there's a few fluffles here and there, but all in all, it's an outstanding episode. Great rebooting of the season, the series, and it's very much the Doctor Who that we recognize.
Magic. Thanks for being, because I've got to go in this order. I have to flip through. It's not like the old software where I could hide it and then bring it back on, so it has to look a little bit rubbish. Obviously, you're going now, Hugh.
Yes, it does.
So it's one of those ones where I actually think it could be all four at different times when watching it. I think it's, the problem I have with giving anything outstanding on something like this is if you look at something like Carnival of Monsters, it's way better. Carnival of Monsters is way better than this. I think this is a bit messy. I think it's a bit rushed. I think that the ideas are there, but they're not well thought out. That said, it could not be anything other than good because there is just so much in it. For 4 episodes, this is entirely engaging. And as John has said, there's so much about what we see now in Doctor Who that's there. It's just not necessarily done in the most coherent fashion. So right. Good.
So, that could have gone in any direction. It ended up as good. So Brian, your head is in on the screen now. So I'm on standby. So your judgment is? I'm hovering.
I would have to agree with Hugh and say good overall. There are faults that just bring it down a bit. I mean, there are episodes of Doctor Who that are just so good, you cannot say anything other than outstanding. Like it's just the best of the best. And this one, as good as it is, it's got a few faults in it that I think had to take it down a notch. So I'm going to say good overall, but I love this episode so much. It's almost a conflict, how can I say I love it so much without saying it's good overall? It's like, because I have a few gripes with it, as you know, particularly the CSO.
Okay. However, it's a split decision, but we go for it. It's outstanding overall from our...
Are you doing Shirley Ballas again? Are you being Shirley Ballas and having the casting vote?
There's moi. Michelle, you said outstanding, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And John did, so it's 3-2.
Oh, so it's 3-2. Sorry, I forget there's 5 of us.
Yeah.
Keep up, John. Sorry.
3-2. So there you go. There's the judgment of the panel. Terror of the Autons goes into our outstanding archive. So thank you. That's been very entertaining, and you've kept us entertained. Thank you, everybody, for your 2 hours plus with us. Hopefully everyone enjoys that. Very relevant after what the War Games in Colour did.
Just off to fist my buns after this.
Well, of course. Yes. So anyway, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Next time.
Bye.